Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, may we have a roll call, please?
Sure. In absence of Secretary Susan Lance, I'll be taking roll today. So Chair Michael Wrench.
Present.
Vice Chair Kristen Stanley, present. Susan Lance excused. Alderperson? Alderperson Jason Craig.
Hello.
Thank you. Commissioner Mary Revington is excused. Commissioner Amy Serafin. Here. Commissioner Jesse Valdez.
Here.
Non-voting member ex officio Loss. And non-voting member ex officio Michelle Runty.
Here.
Let's see, Kevin Schulzer.
Here.
Sheeter. Marion X.
Here.
Al Percarelli. Alderman Eichman. Alderman Craig.
Here.
Oh, you're two times on this paper.
Yeah.
Alderman Salus. Alderman Henson. Hassan. District of Administration Kelly Hirsch. City Engineer Mike Paulos. And Dale.
Here.
And please note that the mayor is also.
Nelson. All members are accounted for.
Excellent. We have a jam-packed agenda, so we're going to be here all night. So we're going to try to make this brief. Currently, are there any citizens who would like to make a comment?
Yeah. My name is John Bergner. I'm with the Franklin. I'm chairman of the Franklin Civic Celebration. And I put in a request to utilize the Lions Legend Park 10 pickleball courts on Saturday, July 5th during the Franklin Civic Celebration. So it's going to be an event that will bring people from all over. We'll have up to 40 teams, 2 players to a team. There'll be a tournament. There'll be instructions. There'll be learning how to buy a paddle. So it's going to be from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday, July 5th.
Awesome. I saw this is on the agenda, so I guess we'll cover that later. Did you have anything else?
Yeah. I just saw if you have any questions, you want to.
Sure.
If the commission has questions now, otherwise he doesn't want us to vote on his item, so because the agenda is so.
Okay. I guess, does anybody have any questions about the pickleball event? And the question I have you advertised this publicly before you had approval?
We had to put in a newsletter, okay? Because the newsletter had a deadline to go out, and then you guys, I put the request in 3 months ago. But you guys, the last 2 months, we're not having the meetings to, make the rearrangement.
Sure. Do you have any questions?
One other question. I know that they block it off usually during the, the civic event. They block off all that area for parking. Where are people going to be parking for the tournament?
Since it's on Saturday and there's not really any other events going on at 8 a.m., we're not having any entertainment until 3 p.m. on that Saturday. So it's going from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. You have plenty of parking then to park, along the street and over by the library. Just like right now, the courts are full.
Right.
They're all along the street right now.
Right. So the civic event on Saturday opens at what time? Like the carnival and stuff?
Yeah, the carnival is at noon.
At noon.
Carnival is at noon. They do wristbands at noon. So they will be up at the upper level. So that's the only other thing going on before 3 o'clock.
And the plan is to park all on the road area then going up
or in the library.
Or at the library.
Yeah. It should not be the night of the 5th, it will be packed.
Right.
We'll have a main stage of entertainment, but it'll be over by that time.
I'm not sure who, you're on the committee, so who does the, crowd control? Is it our police department?
Mostly the police department's there for us.
And-
I am the chairman, so we have 7 members on the committee, but
So this was presented to them, and they know it's in addition to all the other management of the roads and parking and things
Oh, yeah.
as well.
Kevin helps us with all his rearrangement and closing down the roads that we need closed down, and
Perfect.
so we work with DPW and the police.
Great.
Doing it for 25 years.
Right, but not with the pickleball tournament.
First time we had a cornhole tournament last year.
That's more of a walk-up thing. I'm just worried that, we close off most of that area. In fact, our pickleball league last year was at the other park, and they had it all closed off because we had the parade. And so they kept that area blocked off. So I'm just wondering if the parking would go into the community or if it would be allowed to come up closer and at the actual area where the event's going to be all weekend.
Yeah.
So this is just on the 5th?
Just on the 5th.
Here
Yeah.
it says 3rd.
I guess you're not.
6th.
And the only thing is if we have a rain out, then we would like to do it on the 6th with a rain out on Sunday
Okay, and then it's done at what time?
at 4.
Okay, because then we can lock it up. We should lock it up for the people don't wreck it, with fireworks.
Well,
and
during the
stuff.
festival, you lock it up.
Well, to keep people out.
Yeah.
People like fireworks and we don't want the pickleball.
Oh, yeah, and going in there. The fireworks will be the night before, so this will be on the 5th, the night after the fireworks.
Okay, well, just,
But yeah, but Kevin will work with us and let us know, hey, I want to lock it up, and yeah, we can do that.
That's all the questions. Thanks.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
thank you. Any other citizens for a comment?
One more thing, that's our flyer that was in the newsletter. Appreciate it.
Anybody else with a citizen's comment? And we will close the citizen comments. We will move to the approval of minutes from the meeting on March 10th.
We have a motion?
Have a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as they're written.
Yes, I'll second it if I can. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Guys have it. We're going to jump around the agenda to make sure we cover the important things. So the first thing, we will go to new business, letter D.
Unfortunately, Ms. Bose wasn't able to be here this evening. This request is to revise their previously approved time slot for the tennis lessons that the commission had allowed because they have a different instructor. So tennis lessons at Ken Wendell Park were previously approved for the morning time period, and they're requesting slightly different dates and evening time periods. So that information was in your packet. This is something that they kind of had to go ahead and do it anyway because they could not find a tennis instructor, and so they didn't have a choice. I wish Leo was here to explain that better, but that was what was communicated to us and to GPW. So if the commission has any comments or questions, I'm happy to pass them along. Otherwise, I believe this would be okay.
I don't know if those courts are regularly a problem.
I would say it's a hit and miss.
I have a question. What is the change from what to what? I'm not,
I think it's from
Yeah,
probably instructor.
her email, I think. The dates were there. So this is the request. So from 4:45 to 5:45, and then 7. For basically the same dates, there were some slight differences.
Is Miss Voss the same woman that does the rec department?
Yep.
signups, so we could assume that these aren't in conflict with the rec play.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Oh, Ken Windle, got it.
Yeah,
Different part.
different part.
And then the only other thing I have is a question to verify is, then they would post that up for everybody at the site itself like they do for rec ball. So in other words, people would see this time is reserved for this this group. Is that posted on the site? Does
It's
anybody
not,
know?
it's not posted yet, but
It will be. Okay. Yeah, I would just ask. Yeah, I recommend.
we didn't know if it was gonna get approved here, or we told her it was okay, but except for, I mean, those two tennis courts are the best conditioning courts that we have in the city, and it's at night, so those are the issues. But I guess if you guys say it's okay.
My only comment would be, like I said, that it's posted so that people in the community can go anytime and see, okay, I can't play here at such and such a time because it's reserved. I just know from personal experience with the pickleball that other people will come during designated rec play, and until we started posting that, would be very upset that they drove or they traveled and they had no idea that it was reserved. So that's all. Thank you.
That's a good point. Marion, perhaps we could get the list of the known reservations on the website.
Yep.
That would be helpful. Then people could get it electronically without having to go to the actual site. Do we want to do a vote on this?
Sure. We can put it to a vote. Right, make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the time change for the use of Ken Wendell tennis courts for lessons as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Ayes have it. Awesome. We'll move on to letter E. Request by Franklin resident Andy Pelkey to discuss invasive species management in Franklin.
Hello. Hello. I'm Andy Pelkey. I live at 9320 West Grandview Court. I've been a resident for over 20 years, and the issue of invasive species came up early in my move to Franklin, and as far as I can tell, we've made virtually no progress. So I wanted to speak to you because I know your environmental commission was merged with the planning commission. Environmental invasive species, if you do nothing, guess what? They spread. That's why they're called invasive species. And right now, we have this whole list of subnoxious plants like buckthorn, which spread quite well. And to do nothing seems to me, that doesn't make any sense. We want to make progress year after year after year. We need to start. We need a plan, and we need to let time happen. So I was wondering. So first, my suggestion is that we have some plan where residents are helped to identify what an invasive species is, because step one is you got to know this is an invasive species. Mustard, right? Garlic mustard, invasive species, right? Got to identify it. Step two is you have to do something. You have to be compelled to do something. Now, and if we had a plan with those two things, and time went past, we would make progress. So, for example, you could say, well, with buckthorn, let's make it so that if you have buckthorn on the perimeter of your property, like going into your neighbor's property, for example, you have to do something about it. In the middle of your property, don't worry about it. Because I bet that if people knew that, this plant here was invasive, and yet it wasn't in the boundary that I have to get rid of it, they would still say, well, I don't want that invasive plant, so I'm going to get rid of it anyway. But so we need really two things. We need people to know that this is an invasive species, don't want it in the city. And secondly, to compel them to take some small action. Next year, if it's bordering your property, that's a great way to say, you know what, we don't want that going over into the neighbor's property. Your land is your invasive species. So, I mean, just something small. Does anybody have any recollection of why I've done nothing with buckthorn in the last 20 years? I know it came up to the council. Some plan was voted down by the council, for sure. But what's the issue?
I can respond to that if you'd like. So the Environmental Commission, in its form as just the Environmental Commission, took up review of a request to classify buckthorn specifically, both common and the other kind, as a noxious weed under our local ordinances. They did a bunch of work around that, and I'd be happy to bring that back to this commission because they arrived at a recommendation that the focus not be on a single plant species, but on education around native plants and invasive species, the benefits and risks in general, and not codifying a noxious weed. Buckthorn specifically is a noxious weed. So they've done some education work around that since then. They did a survey, which was very interesting because there are many people in the community that kind of don't care about invasive species. They may or may not understand the risk, but there's definitely an element of the community that views buckthorn as a valuable plant because it's fast growing. So that was and then had that recommendation about education around landscaping standards. So they had input into the UDO, and we have a natural resource special exception on the agenda this evening where they're going to be doing an example of a place where they have the chance to say, you know, we have a preference for native plantings. Kinds of things. So some work has been done on that, but in terms of the scale, one of the big issues was public versus private land, and then also enforcement. So, because it would be really difficult. The city owns quite a lot of land that the city has actually been doing invasives removal on. So, the Burn and Victory Creek Park, there's been work done in Future Park, other projects you see over in Lion Legends right now. That work. But it's definitely a topic that's now under your purview even more so. So
we still have the noxious weed list,
correct.
which people are, you know, if they could identify it, would be compelled to get rid of it, right? There's a noxious weed still.
Correct. So the city has a noxious weed list that's regulated by our municipal code,
Right.
and that is enforced by someone called the Weed Commission.
Yep.
That's not the same as the state NR 40 invasive species list, which our ordinances refer to generally as these plants are not allowed, but we don't do the same kind of enforcement.
So have plants that that we do have an enforcement mechanism, right? We have a noxious list which has plants on it, and there is an enforcement mechanism which would compel somebody to get rid of the noxious weeds which they have on their private property. So this isn't cutting any new ground. It's just that we have this sub-noxious list, really the list that nobody wants to deal with. All right, because it's like buckthorn is a very prolific plant. You know, I think if citizens wanted something that grew fast, there are other options besides, you know, buckthorn. Buckthorn also happens to have a male and a female, so maybe just, you know, don't worry about the male ones. You can let those grow. But nonetheless, you know, doing nothing means the last 20 years they've continued to spread uncontrollably. That's a failure. So what I'm asking is that we, you know, we just want to get there. If we want to get these things under control, we have to start. So even if the start is small, at least we started. And you know, a year goes by and some progress is made, and another year goes by and some progress is made. If the council finds it politically, you know, hot potato to do something, perhaps you can convince them to start small. And then, you know, maybe in 3 years say, well, gee, that wasn't bad. You know, we told people, you know, you got to get rid of it if it's bordering your neighbor's property. You don't want it. It's not fair that somebody who doesn't care is allowing their noxious weeds to go over the boundary of somebody who does it, right? That just sort of makes sense. And so maybe there's a buffer of 10 feet, I don't know, something relatively small and easy to manage. And then in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, based on feedback, maybe 20 feet or something. But I think that just having it, maybe allowing, helping people identify it and compelling them to take some small action to get rid of it, why would they not get rid of it on the rest of their property instead of just the border? Well, maybe it's a big, they own a lot of land. It's a big problem. Okay, but here, we're not compelling them to get rid of it everywhere, just in this buffer, so it doesn't creep over the boundary. That way, they're identifying it and they're taking some kind of action. We already have an enforcement mechanism. You just have to say, hey, there's an exception for really prolific things. You don't have to get rid of it everywhere in your property. You just need to get rid of some buffer. I mean, that's sort of minimum, and I hope you consider doing something like that so that in 5 years from now, we've made some small progress. 5 years of progress. Right now, every year goes by, months go by, years go by, and nothing is done, and it keeps getting worse. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It seemed that this first meeting now that we merged, I think it's something to take a look at.
I'd be happy to bring back the prior work of the Environmental
Sure.
Commission. They did some thoughtful research. There's kind of a lot of questions.
I'll also offer up that the rec department has partnered with Muskego and are offering cultivating native lands. And they do teach, I just went through it's like a 4-month class, and we did a prescribed burn. My husband and I just signed up and did it in our last class.
Where was the burn?
It was in a park in Muskego, and we got to participate in that. And then also they teach you about identifying the plants and then eradicating them as well, and what chemicals. So perhaps, that could be in conjunction with rec department as well, if they're going to keep offering that class.
That's a very interesting idea for the Environmental Commission folks. The rec department actually has a CEO representative to this commission. Use it heavily.
Yeah, I think that would be a good first step. We have reviewed and we've heard these comments from Andy before. And in principle, it's very easy to agree with everything that he has to say. The difficult part is enforcing private landowners by way of violation because they have buckthorn on their property. Or garlic mustard, which is prolific as well. Or, you could, yeah. So, I mean, I myself I have a 4-acre piece that's covered in buckthorn. I've spent 4 years and almost $5,000 trying to remove it, and I'm getting there. I'm seeing progress because that's my choice. But you can't just say you have to do this. You know what I mean? Like that. So we have to think of a meaningful way. To me, slapping a ticket on somebody is not a way to.
You're just gonna piss people.
To get, it's not a productive endeavor at all to say we're going to charge people. Now, planting noxious weeds or planting, that's a completely different story. And we should not allow people to plant things that are on a noxious weed or invasive list. That's a baseline that most communities already have, including us. But even NRCS is about to give up on buckthorn, which is sad.
We had one
they don't know what to
citizen
do.
come into the parks meeting who had offered his services. Remember, he was qualified in spraying the chemistry, and we were looking at volunteer opportunities, like groups of volunteers going into different areas. And then I know we also talked one time about Melk doing their land areas and having large burns of the buckthorn as well. But that's another opportunity too, the volunteer idea, to add on to that.
I kind of piggybacking off of Commissioner Serafin saying that the weaponization of such an ordinance, of if you're beefing with a neighbor and, well, they didn't get rid of this, or they didn't get rid of it fast enough, or we have a lot of seniors where the speed of which to eliminate becomes almost punitive of, well, it's because you didn't move fast enough. And, you know, God bless you for having independence and being able to maintain your own home, you know, into later years of life, but you're going to get this punitive thing because of a plant species that grows incredibly quickly, is incredibly difficult to manage and exterminate, and that's not something that I would, and that's, I believe, is the reason why when it came in front of the council was one of the big drivers of, we're not going to do this because it becomes this club that can be used against your neighbor for one reason or another. And I know, like, the idea and the driver behind it isn't a malicious one, but it can become that sort of.
Well, I think we just need to find the space between that type of an action versus something that's proactive. And I think the rec department is a good start. I have one more comment to make on that, is what you made about spraying chemicals. So if you're going to spray the timberland or glyphosate, which is Roundup, to kill the invasive species, you can do that on your own property by going and buying it at a big box store, and that's perfectly. As soon as someone else or Jesse's company goes on your property and sprays it, now you need a pesticide applicator license. That's through our University of Wisconsin Extension office.
It's not, I have it, it's not hard.
It's not,
So,
you
no.
do have to take a test, but I'm just saying, so it's not like you can say, we're gonna get a group of volunteers together,
Right.
and they're gonna go spray.
We
or
had
do
one
buckthorn.
citizen who had that, and he was offering to lead
Yeah.
up a group, and he would do the chemical
Yeah, and it's a
application.
yearly test, and you have to do, so you can do that, but there are
It's
Hurdles.
for
there are hurdles that have to be
and
overcome.
for I mean I know, 'cause I'm licensed 2.0 turf and herbicide. So
Yeah,
and
so you guys
it's-
know, you
yeah.
can't just,
it's just not. The loophole between it is, if someone buys it for you, then anybody can put it on. But it's once you're for hire and bring your own, that's the loophole. So technically, let's say.
I don't think we
call
wanna get involved with the.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta, unfortunately, you gotta hire someone that's licensed. You get in trouble. But same thing as they were saying. It's just, for example, for me to show up for a day, it's $2,000. That hurts everybody. To do something like that with equipment. For me to come spray, or anybody else come spray, if you have your turf, you probably know it's not cheap either. And I completely agree with everyone else. And I love the business, but we can't weaponize it to do, as you know, to say, you know, because I see it more than probably anybody else. It is a weapon against. My neighbors got buckthorn, and they're calling the city on me. Can you please pull this? I've heard that story at least a dozen times. So I think it's red light.
I will bring some of the materials about the back with.
Move to letter F. Resident request of John Bergner for the Franklin Civic Celebration pickleball court that he mentioned earlier. I would like to note that the tournament is only on July 5th, not for 3 days. That is low. I believe he said it was from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., not 6 p.m.
And then rain day was the 6th, right?
The rain date was the 6th.
Eight to what?
8 to 4. I mean, taking a quick look at that, which wish you would have stuck around, because I have a question. Is this cut off at a certain number of people who sign up for it, or can we get 1,000 people? The question that comes up is we have a large civic celebration going on. Parking is at a premium.
And I really remember them blocking off the parking
did.
lot to the library because the kids are coming into like the Midway area, whatever, and
Yeah.
The
right?
parade
Parking's
went behind the library
Yeah.
and around to where this building. And so you could not go on that road behind the library when we did. We walked that parade as a pickleball group. We started at the parking lot in Lions Legend. And that from Lions Legend parking lot all the way behind the library. And we ended in the library around the road, but in the library parking lot. And that was all closed off. You are 100% correct. And if I'm not mistaken, you could get into the library parking lot, but at a certain point before the parade, that also was closed off. Like you couldn't move your car.
Just for my knowledge, the parade.
Yeah, I don't know. That's my question too.
You're at the wrong guy.
Probably the 4th because it's on Friday and everyone's off. Maybe.
It's the 4th.
It's
Is
the
it?
4th,
Okay.
so the parade's not an issue.
So it's just the
It's just civic.
okay. So just
and
the
so it's the carnival
normal
at noon
stuff.
that would conflict with the noon to 4 potentially.
Yep.
Pickleball players. Yeah.
They won't be able to park on it.
They what?
They won't be able to park on it.
They will not.
Where we normally do, right? They probably would they be able to use the parking lot and walk over that bridge from Lions Legend to from Vernon Barg to Lions Legend? Do you think?
that opens up after the parade.
That'll be open on Saturday.
Yeah, that might have to be their option because didn't they have a helicopter too? Like that you could take helicopter rides, and that was coming from that grassy pad right by the tennis courts. Remember, he was taking off and giving rides in the
Yeah.
helicopter.
I don't know.
I don't think they're having.
Not this year.
I haven't heard that anyways.
I think. Can I motion? Possibility. Vote to say yes on that, or can I motion a vote?
Sure.
Do you like?
Well, incorporate the changes in the motion
Oh,
for
okay.
the
So
time.
actually, you want to?
Yes.
Jesse, you want me to take the lead on this?
Yeah, somebody.
Yeah, there we go.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the request by John Berner for the pickleball courts with the changes to reflect the actual application and not the agenda. So for it to be only on July 5th and the time changes to be approved for 8 to 4 p.m.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? I'm opposed.
I'm opposed. I might be open to a friendly amendment to limit the number of people, but then I might be open to it.
That's probably. I don't know. I just think parking is a shit show no matter what. So
It's 3-2.
Already has it
Yeah. All right. Passed.
passed. All right. Jumping around in the agenda since it doesn't make sense because of my ADHD. We're going to move to item 4, unfinished business. Letter G, which is the discussion of the combined Parks and Environmental Commission, scope and purpose, combined commissions, including areas of policy oversight, role in park administration, land conservation, natural resource protection.
Thank you. So, welcome to your new commission. I'd like to take a second to just make a round of introductions, since I think you all know each other, but for the record and kind of say hello. So, Shelley, if you want to start us off.
Yes, I'm Michelle Runty. Shelley. I've been on this commission for quite some time now, since 2018, 2019.
Russell. I'm a non-voting member, but I represent Kayla's Playground. I run the ambassador program for that area, and we recognize the ambassadors every fall after our summer run of ambassador program from May Memorial Day to Labor Day. So I'd like to ask for this commission to actually put it on the calendar for our meeting in September. I know in the past sometimes we don't have a meeting on that date, but it's really primitive that we have that date locked in for September. But that's why I sit on this commission.
I'm Jesse. I've been on environmental board since last summer. I was the chairman for that commission until it merged with yours. Yeah, I've been a Franklin resident my whole life. Grew up on 83rd, and now I live on 8th.
And I'm Kristen Stanley. I'm a Franklin resident. Been here since 2016. Been on the board for almost 2.5 years, I guess now, with the parks. And I currently am a federal employee, and I'm a veteran.
Michael Wrench, been a Franklin resident, been a parks time, government employee, worked at the airport. Yeah, welcome everybody.
I'm Jason Craig. I am the alderman for District 6. I was on the Environmental Commission previously as a way to connect with my son, because now he's 17 years old, but anything to get a 15-year-old at the time to talk to you about something. Very big into conservation. I will take whatever ways I can to have a conversation more than just "it's fine" or "no, we're good." So, but it is a joy to be part of this. So I'm looking forward to being part of the Parks Committee. I had to fight Courtney Day for this spot too.
I'm Amy Seraphin. I was the vice chair on the Environmental Commission. I was on the commission, I guess it'll be just over 2 years in May, or it was just over 2 years in May. I have lived in Franklin since 2019. I have, part of my role on the Environmental Commission is often the expert. I have a master's plant soil science and have taught horticulture at Gateway Tech and several other Illinois universities and junior colleges. So this is my field, and I've enjoyed participating with only minor frustration. Nice to meet you all.
I'm Marianne X. I am the staffer for this commission. I'm the principal planner in the Department of City Development here at the City of Franklin. So in addition to staffing, I also work with the Planning Commission Council. I am the administrator for what is called the Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. So that is a document that gets applied to several of the different types of land use decisions that we make and that my department enforces. And you are the authors of the document. It's a community-created policy that reflects the goals for the parks and open spaces, and the application of that. It is something that we'll be reviewing and revising in the next year or so. So I'm excited to have my expertise. But also just to remind you guys, I know you all know each other in real life, but always to communicate with staff, not with each other via email, etc. For that walking forum issue. To contact me, and I can distribute information and questions for you. So Gail or I are happy to help you guys with those kinds of things. I provided a copy of your administrative rules for the Parks Commission. If we think there's stuff that needs to change, we undertook the task of combining the two commissions in the municipal code, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we gathered everything together in a way that maybe we didn't incorporate stuff into that, which is an administrative policy, etc. So if you guys are like, hey, I have a question or I'm confused about something, please ask me. So, you know, I really appreciate everyone's patience during this process. Combined pleasure all here. So thank you. I recognize that you are all volunteers too, and as someone who does a lot of volunteer, all like.
Kevin Schluter, DPW Superintendent. I'm here because Public Works takes care of the parks.
Dale Borchard, foreman at the DPW. I do, one of my responsibilities is the park, so I guess it's a lot of parks. If you have any questions, you know.
So under this item, we've got a couple of other things. Dale has prepared a presentation. I would suggest that we hold on to that for a few minutes because the agenda is lengthy and we have the NRSE. And then there's also this overview of natural resource special exception procedures and standards of. So on your agenda this evening, you have a natural resource special exception, which is a request for a variance from the natural resource protection standards of the development ordinance here at the city. And then there's also the recommendation form that this commission would typically forward to the deciding body, which as of today will be Plan Commission, but under the scope of this application is Common Council because it was submitted under the old UDO. So with the chair's indulgence, I'll quickly talk through that, and then the applicants for the NRSE are present and would like to present their request. But I want to give you kind of an overview of your responsibilities in this context. So, and you have your fellow environmental commissioners here as resources as well. But I'm just going to kind of talk about what's currently in the code, and then so. The 1998 Unified Development Ordinance has what's called Part 4 of the natural, which is the Natural Resource Protection Standards, and then there is a variance process, which is the request that you're reviewing today. So the Environmental Commission is a recommending body for natural resource special exceptions. So this applies to a variety of natural resource types in the city. Franklin has very rigorous requirements and is very conservation oriented. So there's a lot of the code that is designed to protect existing natural resources, but in cases where that protection is not possible for a development application for one reason or another, the applicant has the burden of proof to demonstrate that they affirmatively can't do their development at all without somehow altering those requirements. So there is a variance process, which is the natural resource special exception. So this slide refers to the future NRSE applications. Today is actually the effective date of the new ordinance. And so future applications will be reviewed under Part 7 of the new UDO, but this application was submitted prior to that, and we'll touch on that during the actual application. But I'm just going to kind of canvass this broadly, and then the applicant can talk about the details of their application. So in your packet, you will have received a number of documents, including what is called a Natural Resource Protection Plan. And this is the kind of the core document of a variance request. It contains information about the existing conditions of the site, so what natural resources are present there, and the ordinance regulates all types of water bodies, so wetlands, rivers, wood streams, etc., ponds, and it also regulates woodlands. The old UDO regulated steep slopes, the new one does not. And so those standards under Part 4 were basically, if you touch water in Franklin, you will have to do this variance process. So if you are in the setback of a stream or a wetland or a river or a pond, you will need to do the variance process. And then the past UDO distinguished between mature and young woodlands in a little bit of a different way from the ordinance that's now in effect. But basically, trees are protected. The new ordinance also includes a protection for specimen trees, individual old growth trees that might not be part of a woodland, because a woodland is measured by trees where the grounds are touching, so they're a group that constitutes a woodland tree. So all of these natural resources are kind of what we regulate and what you're evaluating the application for. There's sometimes discussion in these questionnaires and in public about other things like critical species habitat, etc. But that's not regulated by the city's ordinances. There are other external folks that do those kinds of regulations. So in addition to a review process by the city, applicants also have to show that they have done their due diligence in terms of meeting local requirements for the DNR. So wetland permitting is conducted at the state level, and also any federal permits that may be required. So the Army Corps of Engineers is the most common group that is interacted with for that. So our floodplain ordinance, under the old UDO, the floodplain was regulated in addition to a separate floodplain ordinance that met federal requirements to comply with FEMA's insurance. They have federal insurance rate maps that then feed into, you have to enforce this local ordinance in order to receive that benefit. And the UDO also had additional, slightly more restrictive standards and a zoning map. The new ordinance only uses the floodplain ordinance separately so that we can split out the floodplain permitting process, which is incredibly technical, and if mitigation is required, it has to meet some very specific standards. So if there were wetlands in a floodplain and being impacted by that project, it might still require an NRSE, but the floodplain itself is regulated separately from the natural resource special standards. So currently, under this is the last application, the floodplain would be something that you would have to consider, but for future, it may come up, but it is regulated separately. Okay, so just in terms of procedure, it's required, a natural resource special exception is required whenever an impact is greater than what's allowed under the table. So the table that I showed you before is the old UDO, and I have the new UDO for you. I'm going to pass that around. So these are the new standards in the new ordinance. So for future applications, that's applicable, and then we have the slide for this current one. It requires review and recommendation by the Environmental Commission and Plan Commission and approval from Common Council. The new ordinance requires approval at Plan Commission. There is also a requirement for a public hearing. That's the case with all variance types. But the applicant has the burden of proof to show that the requested exception meets the requirements. So the applicant provides documents which you've seen in your packet. I'm going to do a brief presentation. I am not the planner that reviewed this application, so some of the detailed questions I'm afraid I don't really have enough information to respond to. But then this commission makes a recommendation in terms of in the past, it has been this form, which I think should be subject to revision in future because it no longer aligns with the ordinance, but this was a reflection of the ordinance's responses. So this is an example. Remember, the Environmental Commission previously talked about revising this form. So I have it for you this evening as kind of a point of reference, but it needs to be updated for also your structure. Yeah, well, we can talk about that later. So Commissioner Seraphim had already undertaken some of that work, but with the new UDO, I think there'll be additional changes we should look at as a group. So are there any specific questions about just NRSCs in general right now? I'm happy to answer them, or you have your fellow Environmental Commission members.
I have one question about the special exception. So, is it in a floodplain as well as having wetlands?
The application that's under new business does not have floodplain.
Okay. So then I'm not going to talk about the old UDO. Got it. Okay.
And then with the chair's permission, I'd like to move on to the Franklin High School.
Yeah, fire away.
So, a number of items. This is typically what this looks like for these kinds of requests. It's similar to what Plan Commission receives for development review applications, but your package should include a report that was written by Nate Fuchs, who is a planner here at the City of Franklin and was the reviewer for this application. The draft standards, findings, and decision for this item. So this is what the ultimate adoption document would look like. It's pretty similar to your recommendation, but it kind of walks through all of the different standards that are in the ordinance. The applicant has provided information. So these are also in accordance with what's required for this application review in terms of a mitigation plan and also drawings and information about what's going on the site. So I have some slides, and then I'm sure you're all familiar with the high school, but that is the location of the request. It's in a relatively residential area, and the majority of work is going to be occurring in the southeast corner of the site. So when you're looking at these maps, the north is actually on the left. So, and with that, Mr. Cromie and Jesse are here to about this item. So I don't know how you interact with them, but typically what occurs is they will come up and kind of talk through what the request is.
Sure.
So,
Gentlemen, fire away.
Wants to come up closer or sit here, or what do you want to do?
Whatever's more comfortable for you.
You want to see?
Whatever's more comfortable. Mr. Crone, hold
Mr.
it down.
Cromie.
Looking for my dad.
I'm trying to be formal because these are all commissioners.
Well, Mr. Wrench has never called me that. Andy Cromie, Assistant Superintendent with Franklin Public Schools. I don't know if you need an address. Official address, 8255 West Forest Hill Avenue, Franklin, 53132. So you'll see the map of the existing property is outlined up here. As you know, in November, we passed a referendum adding field house pool, completely updating some new tech ed space, some renovated tech ed space on the existing green area directly north of the high school. With that green area being gone, creating some of that green space in what would be the southeast corner of our site, bringing tennis courts onto Franklin High School site for the first time in its history to have home tennis matches. So again, where that upper right green space is, again, most of that remains green space, although not in its existing form. It becomes green space in terms of field. And then tennis courts, you can see where they're outlined. Detention pond, kind of connecting where the road connects to Highview, or the parking entrance and exit or enters into Highview. So that's the primary portion of things that we have to mitigate. Where the existing, or where the building, new building is going, there are some pieces there, but much smaller in terms of total mitigation that has to be maintained or has to be impacted on the site, I should say. So I'll leave it to questions.
Elevation.
So the, probably easier if I just stand. So this has a significant elevation change, 15 to 20-ish feet maybe. Yeah. So parking lot will go back here about 70 spaces or so. This is designed for staff. As it's currently, we'll have a retention wall keeping this upper part at that elevation. Complete retention wall along here. The tennis courts are going to sit somewhere around here. That'll be fenced. Again, tennis balls are going to go like they fly around a little bit, so that'll be fenced to help protect that as well. There's no determined elevation change here. Remaining stays high, lower stays low. Retention walls were necessary.
In the road going out to Highview, two-way traffic.
So this will go out here. This is designed for, again, it's going to be construction traffic for workers. So 50 to 100 cars, depending on how much work is being done on any particular day. All of those workers will park up here, so this will get leveled out and laid with stone for a few years while this is all being constructed. Once that construction ceases, this is meant as a before and after school for teachers only. 70 cars, give or take the number of spots in the back here. Certainly at nighttime though, or after school, if tennis matches are happening or students are practicing here, there's going to be some traffic, but it is not meant as a thoroughfare around the building. No, I'm not going to say that that's never going to happen, but like one of the things we got at the Planning Commission and at Common Council as well, we're going to see students come cruising out of here. So we have cameras everywhere. The moment we know that it's a student, we will probably warn them first, but then the parking passes. And then that's rather we'll work through those particular issues. So there will be some traffic every day. I don't think it'll be as heavy as people are anticipating. I guess that's about 70 or so spots before and after school here. And then after co-curriculars, the others traffic, tennis, practice. Really not a thoroughfare.
Soccer field that's listed. That's placed.
So this is all green space. Whatever can practice up here, very similar to the fields we have here. One of the questions that we did also receive, like, will we ever play soccer games up there? It's possible, just like we play there, that this probably becomes maybe a freshman or a JV soccer field, but it'll be natural grass. It's not being turfed. At this time, people that attend a JV or freshman soccer game might be like 25 people. So, like, again, even if we're parking back here to meet that, probably most likely they're parking here because this is on elevation or relatively close. Like, this is not walkable from here. Finding a potential wall. This has some elevation, but you easily be able to walk around. But again, this is practice, practice, practice. Could we play a game there? Sure. So we could play a game. It's not.
No intention on lighting them.
No.
Okay.
So tennis courts will have lights. We're still working through exactly what that will look like. All the photometrics will keep that within our boundaries for sure. No intention of lights or scoreboard or speakers.
So to take a quick step back, what's happening here, the main bulk of their request is that they're going to be removing a woodland in that area that's becoming play spaces. So again, it will still be a green space, but there is a woodland there, and then they will be required to mitigate that. So the blue areas on the drawing are proposed mitigation. They're also proposing off-site mitigation, which is allowed under both the current and future ordinances. So meaning that because they're taking away trees, they're required to put new trees in. So it's not, those new trees will become a habitat over time. The question is, what is the value of that space?
So orient yourself to this land. This would be about 83rd, and if you went directly east, you'd run into Franklin. So, but that's about 83rd. Take Franklin, literally west. So that's 21 acres in total. A lot of this is already wooded, but these are areas that we intend to replace.
The other area was on.
All of it is on site.
Yep.
The rest is on site. If you can scroll, I think up one more. Yeah. So this is Drexel roundabout right there. So some of that in this existing area here. This is all unused land right here. So we currently have field here. We have a second field here. This is all unused, like not touching that, but there is area to mitigate some of that. It would be just to the north of that field that would go in, or where those woods are now, shooting out to the north of the two existing.
Do you know if there's any value to speed area that is demoed for that? Or is it mostly just
check with Jesse
scroll?
on that?
Sure.
Yes, 100% value. Yeah, that's why it's in a conservation easement to begin with. Or we wouldn't be sitting. If it was no value, it wouldn't be in a conservation. But there is a report on the tree species that we did receive in our packages that gives, you guys had to have it surveyed as part of this application.
Yeah.
Is this, when we look at this map that we were provided, the existing woodland buffer and the existing wetland buffer, where is the conservation easement boundaries? I'm trying to locate that. The entire
It's
conservation.
essentially this area right here, which is
That
about
it,
where
Mary?
Highview comes in, or would come in if it were connected
That
to
it?
the south. For the easement,
So I believe there's a couple of separate easement areas.
some
correct?
small like pockets.
Yep.
This is the vast majority of that southeast part.
If I may, Jesse Becker, civil engineer with Point of Beginning. We're at Stevens Point, 4941 Kirschling Court, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. So the existing conservation easement does definitely include this area. It also incorporates pretty much all of the natural resources on the site existing.
Okay.
There is, I scrolled to the very bottom. This is like the proposed conservation easement following the mitigation efforts, so you can kind of see where the existing limits were kind of just like wrapping around some of these natural resources that are here right now, and then expanding out to include our mitigation areas.
So if I may, just to, it's this boundary here on this map that we're looking at that goes all the way behind the high school, all the way here, and around here.
Correct.
These dotted
That
areas.
is the existing easement, conservation easement that was agreed to in 2014, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you couldn't just move stuff to the other side because that's under conservation as well.
Excuse me, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
These areas here.
Yeah, the existing conservation easement is pretty restrictive in
It
terms
comes
of
around the whole
Correct.
school.
Exactly. Yeah, the school doesn't really have any more buildable space with the current conservation easement.
Yeah.
So in order to get this expansion done, that's why we're looking at making some adjustments to the conservation easement and then mitigate for any natural resources that would be disturbed by the proposed project.
So I have a question, and it's probably for you, Marion. I have several questions, but this is where I want to start. Is the conservation easement in 2014 when was made with the school board, correct or not correct?
Yeah, so when we require easements at the time of a land division or at the time of development. So there was a site plan approval that occurred, and the text of the easement is usually that template you guys see. What a conservation easement does is it restricts what can change within the easement area without changing the ownership of it. The school district still owns the land and had to agree to the easement, but then the city says, we, in order to grant this site plan with these changes, it was also an time, are placing restrictions on the remaining natural resources. It's something that's required by the ordinances in the past. The future ordinance will also require that, but it's a separate document that gets recorded against the property. So yeah, that was part of that whole previous NLC.
Okay, so when I look at these questions, this questionnaire, one of the questions, and I think it's actually kind of repeated twice, is this a self-inflicted request? And the answer is you say no, but if the school board, which you represent, agreed to this easement to build the current facilities in 2014, now you want to change that agreement. It is a self-inflicted issue, right?
I wouldn't disagree. Much like this board changes over,
So-
the Common Council or Planning Commission, they change boards and different ideas come forth and move forward. So our school board isn't
Yeah.
the same thing. 11
No, I
years
mean,
ago.
I recognize it wasn't you,
No,
but I'm
yeah.
just saying you're representing Franklin Public High School, who did agree to a conservation easement to protect this woodland, mature and young woodland, and these wetlands. And now you want a special exception to not fulfill that agreement from 2014.
We're looking to maximize the site. From the woods, we do not use it from an educational standpoint.
But it's not there it's there as an environmental resource. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that too, because the intention, even in the old UDO of a conservation easement, is that it remains into perpetuity. That's, you know, those are the pluses and minuses, that's the back and forth that when we come as a developing a community. I mean, this isn't news to you guys, right? When you develop a community, you agree to preserve and reserve certain sections of land into perpetuity because we all know we need mature trees for wildlife, for habitat, for, you know, all of these. So now you want to build on it. The school wants to build on it. And I'm not going to say you, but the school board wants to build on it. I understand that. But when I also read this stuff, so I first want to establish that it was agreed to, and it is now a self-inflicted problem because they agreed to it, and now you're not. So some of these questions that, especially for people new to these special exceptions, I think it's, you know, it's not really been answered in factual manners, and so I also have a little bit of a issue with the number 4 question, to say that the city's voted on the referendum. Yes, we have, but I don't think citizens were informed in the referendum that these items had to go on a special exception conservation easement. Like, that wasn't part of what was communicated prior to a vote. So
Probably listing that specifically was not, but certainly green space, tennis courts were part of those drawings that were.
And it was open for public hearings.
and during the public hearings, was the land already designated as a natural, or as an easement conveyed to?
Oh, no, I did not.
You know, and that's all I say.
That part wasn't that.
So I guess rather than go through some of these other issues that I have with the way that the questions are answered, and I just, for Miriam, for the city's sake, I think, you know, if we're going to continue to use these questionnaires and the due diligence is on the applicant to fill this out, I think when the city planner, who's no longer here either, right, Nick? Or he's not.
He works
He's not
outside.
here.
Okay, but he didn't attend this meeting. He's just told us, I recommend that we approve this, right? There's some other, I guess I do want to point out Habitat for Aquatic Organisms and Habitat for Wildlife. It's repeated that we're going to put a wet detention pond. But I do need to make sure that this council understands habitat in a wetland is not comparable to a wetland detention pond. Wetland habitats have ecosystems that are much more complex. Wetland detentions are stormwater control. So it is not apples to apples, right? And so when I look at the proposal, the things that I also would like to bring up are, if you look at the standards, findings, and decision documents. Number 1, my point's been made. The conditions were not self-imposed by the applicant. The applicant is Franklin Public Schools, who in 2014 agreed to this conservation easement. So I do believe it is self-imposed. We can agree to that. Number 2, necessary improvements to the high school facility. I don't know that necessary is an accurate descriptor for soccer fields, tennis courts, parking, concessions. I'm not saying those aren't great things to have, but they are not necessary. They're in addition to, right? We've been functioning as, my daughter graduated there. I think she got a great education. I don't think adding these things is necessary, a necessary improvement. And I don't think that they directly influence the ability to educate. And number 3, in your number 3, the special exception. Item C. Applicant represents that proposed wetland and woodland mitigation areas are expected to be in harmony with the intent of the UDO and the Natural Protection Guidance document. But the UDO is very clear in Part 4 that all natural resources should be, if you look at section number 4, I don't necessarily need to read this to all of you. But the special exceptions are supposed to, the conservation easements are supposed to be carried out into perpetuity and to make a variance from them. It says all natural resources are required to be protected under the division. They shall remain undisturbed and in their natural state, except those natural resources where mitigation is permitted and where that mitigation is in strict accord with those requirements set forth in this division of the ordinance. This is our UDO. It's in the old one and it's in the new one. And then when I look at your request, we're not in strict accord with the requirements of mitigation. You're asking to do less mitigation than is required. And I don't understand where the city or why a planner would even put this in front of this commission. I don't know. I don't understand it. So if we go to the natural resource special exception request, you are asking to do less mitigation than is required by the UDO.
If I may respond.
Yeah.
The site plans are still actively being worked on, and we've been kind of making tweaks as we go. It's a very tight construction schedule. They want to start construction in August. So you're correct that it's like the amount of mitigation that is currently shown on the drawings is a bit less than what will be required, but we will be bumping that up to meet all the requirements. It's just the plans have been shifting a little bit, because they're not quite locked in. So we're slightly underneath where we need to be with mitigation because the limits of construction have expanded slightly. So once we go to Plan Commission, we're going to have it all cleaned up and it will be all in accordance.
So if you're disturbing 8.18 acres, is that still an accurate number?
The woodland?
Yes. And so the mitigation ratio that you're using would be 1.25 acres are replaced for every acre removed?
Right now we're showing the 0.75 from the new standards.
And that's not correct. That's where I'm saying, that's what I'm reading in here, is that you're proposing to give back less, but the mitigation standards are 1 to 1.25.
Under the current UDO that was in place when we submitted. I guess when we went to submit, we talked to city staff about potentially following that new UDO standards.
This is the new UDO. And so I thought we were supposed to, this is the new UDO. I thought we were supposed to look at the old UDO.
Yeah, and there was discussion about how to handle that.
I guess I feel like we've jumped from new or old depending on what is convenient and not necessarily in the nature of what we are supposed to be doing for our natural resources.
Yeah.
Didn't you just say we were under the old UDO for this special exception?
Applications that were submitted under the old UDO before the effective date are being reviewed under that.
And so, I feel like this is a big point because are we supposed to do 1.25 or 0.75? And then we got to go through and look at, because you've changed the other mitigation with the the required 30-foot, or you requested to change the required 30-foot woodland buffer as well. So how are we supposed to make a recommendation if we don't even know what UDO we're looking at here? I mean,
I completely. As someone, I graduated high school 5 years ago. I every tech ed and every outdoor class I could. Kind of hypocritical for school to come ask to remove just over 1,000 shrubs, 683 trees. But then my teacher's going to give us a seed to plant at the end of the year and say, that's good. You know, we're supposed to be teaching our kids to take care of our environment. And for fucking tennis courts, and you know, it's
a
like
concession stand?
concession stand, and it's not even on site. Like I took, you said earlier that classes don't use that up there. I don't know if Pat Gaines still works with you up there, but we worked outside all the time for apes there. You know, conservation's great. That's what the point of this commission is to do. And I understand, like, I loved the opportunity I had at the high school to be outside. You know, that's why I'm on this commission. That's why I took those classes. So you just, I mean, essentially, for apes class, let's go play in the dirty river now. You know, for tennis courts and the parking lot. I mean, these numbers are not. I mean, you said it before. Let's just go less on it because we can screw with the UDO a little bit. I think that's kind of I don't know.
I mean, I think that
We've heard the same story every time.
the school board should want to do the highest standard for
To set an example for us.
and setting an example and for students. And when I read the special exception requests, it seems like instead the school board is asking for special exception to not be held to the same standard that anybody else in this community that wanted a special exception would be held to. And I will not in good conscience vote yes, go ahead and do that. I also think these numbers, they're very difficult to follow because we do jump from the old UDO to a new zoning ordinance. Now we're talking about, but to the new UDO. And so that, and Marion, this is a comment too to the city planners who accepted this. This should be cleaned up and not allowed to happen. Like, I don't know why this would come before this committee in this way where it jumps back and forth between, it's almost like it's devised to be not able to be understood.
So we've had 5 meetings with the city over this particular site.
Okay.
These are the recommendations that we were supposed to use. The new UDO in determining the mitigation.
The new UDO. So
That's what we were
at
advised
the
to do.
beginning of the meeting, I thought we said the old UDO. And so this is my problem exactly, is we can't vote on something when we have two things you're the school board that wants the special exception and the city, and you're in conflict with what information you're giving this committee. I also want to point out that edgeland habitat, even if you're replacing, you know, I see where you're taking this contiguous protected woodland and you're wanting to put 0.49 acres down here in the corner, 2 here, a couple more over here. The value of a contiguous woodland versus segmented woodland is vastly different because of edgeland habitat. It's more detrimental to wildlife because you have more interior habitat, which is, you know, crucial for a lot of species. So to say I'm going to take these 8.5 acres out of the 10 that we have, and I'm going to give you a little fragment here and a little fragment here and a little fragment here, and I want to give you less than what is required in the mitigation, to me is egregious.
If I may,
Yeah.
the mitigation areas, while they are divided from each other, they are contiguous with the existing woodland that's there. So the intent would be, we're taking this existing woodland and we're expanding it. So the green is the existing woodland, and the blue would be an expansion to that existing woodland. And that's true at both properties. The existing woodland on the offsite property, currently this is cropland up here, so we'd be infilling it with woodland. And there's kind of like just a general open space over here as well that would also be infilled, and therefore it would be contiguous with the existing woodland once
What's
it's grown.
the intention of this site in the future?
Woodlands? Nothing. It's not useful for a school site. You just happen to own it.
So why wouldn't you want to just use this whole site as your mitigation site?
Because lots of it is already wooded. So it's not like we can't replace
It's
the woods
already
with the woods.
wooded.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything that's not in the blue is already wooded.
Exactly. We're kind of maxing this out. I don't know if it's like, maybe we could do like a little
I
bit
could
more
only
here,
see
but-
along Hilltop, and that's in soybeans right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're ending that lease and planting trees.
We don't have a lease on. We can't figure out who's farming it, but they're farming it.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And I don't mean, I
it
just,
shouldn't be a farm.
you know, we're tasked here at the Environmental Commission to protect the natural resources, which are as important as education. To have green spaces for our wildlife, insects, you know. So to see that we in 2014, you know, the school board agreed to all of this, and now to come back and say, we're going to take back that agreement. The agreement is into perpetuity. And so to me, that from 2014 to now is what? How many years? 11? Do small math for me. That's not even, like, what kind of oversight is going on in this community when we can't even, for 10 years, say, oh, perpetuity? Nope. And then we fragment these things, and then, you know, in 5 more years, are you going to come back and ask to add something else onto the, you know, an ice skating rink over here in this wetland area? And it's not a personal you, it's just I really think that we have to step back and start looking at these kinds of things. These special exceptions that we're getting are riddled with this kind of.
I think every time you see one of these, it's like we sit here, and this isn't just you guys either. We sit here,
Yeah.
see the same thing,
Yeah.
and then we pass it, and then on the way home we're like, well, why am I part of this board again? And
What's the good?
yeah, because like,
Alderman, you can finish it later.
It's okay. So Commissioner Seraphin took a lot of some of my questions that I had in terms, especially with the 2014 exception that was previously established. So I know some of the answers to the questions I'm going to ask, but I'm going to ask them to kind of give knowledge base to my colleagues here. But looking forward, as far as it goes, you know, as Commissioner Seraphin was asking them, what would happen? You know, one of the items here is saying that if this doesn't happen, this is going to really be a hindrance to the development of the school, and it's going to be a problem. And this is what you're building towards to allow for growth and expansion. Great, get that. My 2 issues are, number one, as more hard surfaces introduced to the property as a whole. And I've seen that a lot of areas in District 6 where more hard surfaces create a lot more water management issues. And I have concerns, especially with your surrounding area being residential and other people's homes where water's kind of undefeated and it goes where it wants to go. And I have concerns about more hard space or hard surface that's going to lead to possible flooding issues. Is there something that is being addressed as far as maintaining really strong drainage for your property and the surrounding properties along?
Absolutely.
Jesse, take that.
Yeah, I'll respond to that. Let me pull. So a few things are happening, right? Probably the biggest spot where we're going to be adding hard surface where it's green space right now would be the expansion to the building itself. So the proposed building here would be kind of infilling. There's an existing soccer field right here, and then just some general green space as well. So the new building, we would be sending all of that water to this existing wet pond. This wet pond, it was rebuilt back in that 2013 project to provide stormwater storage and rate control and treatment, all of those good things that we are required to do by the city, by the DNR, and ultimately by the Clean Water Act. So we're going to be sending this water to this basin. We will be reconfiguring the discharge of this basin to restrict the flows coming out of that basin further. So right now, this basin is fairly unrestricted. There's an existing 24-inch culvert, and water drains out through that. So we'll be implementing a new control structure to reduce the discharge coming out of this basin. So this basin will be taking on all of that extra water from the building that you've been talking about.
Do you have the capacity to hold that much more water in that space?
Yes, we do. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of storage here. This basin is quite large. It is rather deep as well versus the surrounding area. So we have modeled where that water would be, like elevation-wise, before and after the project. Water levels in the pond will, of course, be higher, but it's not going to be like overtopping or anything like that.
Okay.
So you have enough storage there to handle the building. And then additionally, up here where the tennis courts and the parking would be, we have a new wet pond proposed. That's just additional storage that does not exist right now. So stormwater runoff from that area would go to that wet pond. It would get the treatment it needs, it would get the control it needs to meet all of the applicable standards. So we are doing our due diligence for stormwater management.
Okay. And then my other concern then is looking forward. As Commissioner Serafin was saying, well, what's stopping in 2038 saying, you know what, this AI development lab is going to be what we need to educate our kids in the future. We don't have the space on the current site, but we need another expansion and we need another exception. And as evidenced here in your application saying that there's no more land on the site, you have to do offsite mitigation because of lack of remaining space on the property itself. Get that. But then I know that Franklin Public Schools has other land within the city. Instead of building up this monolithic building, has there been real discussion about the possibility of creating another space? So dividing Franklin High School into two. I know New Berlin does that, Eisenhower and West. Other districts do that. Was there real conversation about that? So the need for more exceptions is not on the table, but rather let's develop other properties so that way we can allow for growth, but having it be a little bit more manageable, because instead of one large building, we're doing two smaller facilities.
So prior to my being here, prior to our superintendent being here, the question was asked to the public about splitting the high school and came back with a resounding no. So that was investigated at some point before we were here, but I would say not too far distant in the past. I don't have the exact year, but as part of the survey. So that was a resounding no. We do own 220 acres on Ryan Road. We did investigate the cost of a new high school and entirely moving from the site and putting it there. That was a tune of about $265 million. Build the high school that we want, what exists now, plus the new spaces that are going on. So that was pretty much shot down in terms of even taking that to the public for their voting. We know we tested 185 million, and that was shot down pretty heavily. So 265 really off the table in terms of actually doing that. But we did investigate whether we could hold that or not. So I guess like what I would respond to that is, first of all, I would never agree to anything that ever says never ever will it ever happen in the future, and I'm telling you, like 100% certain that that's never going to happen. What I would tell you is in 2014, and this is a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit short-sighted, the entire process, given if we didn't have a conservation easement, we'd be talking about mitigating a small portion of wetlands where those tennis courts and other green space field are going to go. But there's a conservation easement. And the reason I say it's a little bit short-sighted is this site only has so much usable land on it. And we put the usable part under that conservation easement. All of the green and blue that's located on the far left of that traverses upwards of 20 feet of elevation, has a navigable waterway, has significant wetland. Like, it is a serious process to build. In fact, one of the alderpersons is asking us to investigate a connected road to Drexel. And just to mitigate a road in there, roughly $2.5 million. And that didn't even talk about moving the navigable waterway or somehow traversing it, removing the wetlands and doing all of those things. That's just, how do we actually construct the road there? And then not all the headaches that even happen on Drexel. So to do anything with that existing land is a real problem. From a cost standpoint, we're better off taking additional pieces and saying we're going to put them at this offsite. But thinking back to some of our needs there, right now we have one gym and we have 1,600 kids taking PE. Almost every one of our kids takes a PE every year. I can talk, all of the PE teachers have told me they hope for like the calmest winter, calmest fall of all time, and the earliest spring so that they can get kids outside, because otherwise we have kids sitting on the sideline while some kids play. And we're running classes of 50 in gym where 25 are participating and 25 sit, and then we swap them out versus getting them all doing something.
So a new gym is going where?
Big black.
Yeah.
So, and now, what percentage of the referendum or this gym or the bill from the referendum is outside of this special exception?
Well, the special exemption sits up here.
Right.
For the most
So
part.
you can still get your gym. You don't have to come talk to us about that.
I don't think I would say that. It does kind of stick out, like here there's existing. So even if we weren't proposing anything up here, I think we would still be here talking to you.
Okay.
Because
but at a much smaller.
Yes, at a much smaller size, correct.
Uh-huh.
But we would still be here because we're kind of, I mean, as you can see here, the building extends like into this wood line. There's wetlands here. So we would still be here. It's just it wouldn't be as large of a mitigation area and a disturbance what we're otherwise talking about.
So when you talk about where building on what will be the proposed mitigation area would be cost prohibitive, to what extent? Like a 1.5x, 7x? Like how much more expensive, so that way that can kind of be baked in the cake as far as what would be the ask in the future of residents for possible referendum 3.0, 4.0? I don't know which version we're on. But what the next referendum would look like as far as a dollar amount, to say, well, we want to grow, but it's going to be really expensive, and here's the reason why, and this is all part and parcel of how we're going to get it done. Does that make sense at all, or not really?
Yeah, it does. Well, first of all, some of this land isn't even worth building on because it's not wide enough necessarily to do a whole lot with. Some of it is, like out here, but Again, that space is narrow too when we get close to 51st. Really, in thinking in totality about the high school as it sits, this is relatively new here. This is the Saber Center. So that and this strip is new. This would all be new here. It's really figuring out how do we replace that interior portion by replacing. So, like, this is way past even when I'll even thinking of working at Franklin, but at some point the mill's going to have to get either gutted or redone. It's not going to move down here because building anything here to attach to the high school, from even just a student traversing that, try to get there, is not feasible. It's already going to be a hike. You have PE and then the gym. Your next class is a music class on this side. Like, that's already a hike. This is like, I don't even know how long passing time would have to be, 15 minutes? Like, insurmountable from an operations standpoint. Because that doesn't even make sense. And what we're trying to do is provide a cohesive building so students are never walking outside, walking under some sort of awning, and building anything to connect to over here. Like, we'd have to traverse all of this and somehow get through that space. Building it up here does not necessarily make sense because this elevation is so drastic. Okay. Which is part of the issue with the road that's being asked to come through here, is we'd be trying to mitigate this space and put a road in it. Right, where like, that's
slope
not
is just
reasonable in terms of that. So I'm not going to tell you that it never is ever going to be proposed. I'm telling you I have a really hard time envisioning that land being useful for anything. Where, again, this is in proximity to our entire site, relative proximity to our site. Not that it doesn't come with some land mitigation either, because there's some elevation in there. It's not 20 feet from south to north.
So, but when the question is asked how the project could be made smaller while still meeting the needs, and the answer is given that the project cannot be made smaller while still meeting the project needs. It seems to me like the project could be made smaller by doing the building and getting your gymnasium and not adding tennis courts and a soccer field and a snack shop. Is that not an accurate statement?
So we're losing an entire practice field here, an entire PE field, so physical education.
Mm-hmm.
So that physical education space is going to go up, have to then go up into here. This field is an existing youth soccer competition soccer field for our freshmen and JV throughout the fall and spring season as needed. So again, losing this means those practices are moving into there. So not having a competition size soccer field here does hinder our co-curricular ability to do that. Again, we can make it smaller, but then we don't have that ability for our soccer teams to play, and then everything relies on that. And that isn't feasible either. Just not enough opportunity for all of the teams that play on there to host games at all three levels and all the things that are played on there. That field is used a lot.
Just out of curiosity, how many members, freshmen, maybe, and varsity are there?
I know it's grown by like 3 times in the last.
Well, when I
by
went, it was 6
threefold.
people. So
That's 18.
I think we have the #1 ranked player in the state. Never played a home tennis.
The home right now is the
Just right
semis.
next to the woods.
It's
One
crazy
person's
out there.
gonna
Ken
graduate
Wendell.
next year.
Yeah.
I mean, come
But
on.
we're giving them Ken Wendell to practice on. So, I like that you discussed the Ryan Road because that area has been earmarked for a future school or park. So we're from the Parks Commission and we've talked about that parcel of land. But you say never ever would I agree to something to say never ever would that happen. There may come a point where Franklin has to long-term plan to say that will be a split high school and that this kind of facility would be put at that location because of the buildup of homes that we have here in our community. So we've got 1,000 new homes and we've got more coming in. It may have to split the high school. So to cluster it all into this one area and make this concrete or cut grass, or we have the Clean Water Act pool that we can put rainwater into. It doesn't make sense to me. Why wouldn't we long-term plan to split this? A concern for you saying that there is a, tight schedule for construction. Is the money an issue that it has to be spent now, or that the contract has to be negotiated now for the referendum funds? Is that why we're on a tight construction schedule? It seems like we're going ahead of the game to say we want this all approved because we have to stay on our schedule, where it should be we want to make a good, solid plan for continuing to preserve the wetland that our kids are learning about in the high school there, and giving these green spaces and keeping our school like, you know, the Indian community school. Have you been on that campus? They have trees growing within the school, and it looks like a prairie land when you walk on it. It's so natural. We're just putting all this congestion in here because you said to us here tonight, we don't want to build on that other area because nobody wants that right now in Franklin. But we also don't want 1,800 kids per graduating class, right? Because that is too congested, and that's not conducive to a healthy learning environment. So piecemealing it, breaking it down into smaller parcels, and then putting the other nice to have things like tennis courts onto a long-term plan might be a recommendation. The other thing is it did flood a couple years ago, that road. We had the road was washed out. My son is a senior this year, and taking him to school, Drexel was flooded out. So we already have known road flooding in that area around going up Drexel, correct? And then also in the neighborhood behind it. Is that because of the Root River that's part that's coming through there maybe? I'm not sure.
I'll have to refer to Jesse, but I will address your other two.
I believe it was like 2023. There was, I couldn't get to work. I had to go a different route because the road was flooded over.
I think that's much farther east, closer to 30. That flooding area.
It was right by the high school. You couldn't go up Drexel because of it. Yeah.
Oh, the
It was the
bridge
part where-
washed
yeah,
out.
it was under
on
the bridge.
Putes between 68th and 51st.
So there's already,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and that might have been a one-off.
There was a
But
water
there-
break.
But
That's
there,
what caused that.
water may know it was from the rain. I
Yeah, that's
remember
he is
There
right
were-
on that.
where
Actually.
that-
it was
Right
a
on,
water main.
right in, through the Raymond Park there, where the pathway goes.
No, it was where
right by
the
the-
bridge was over.
Yeah, so
that's
water
what it
main
was.
broke
Okay.
and then washed out half the road.
Watch out all the
Oh,
stuff.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to address your 2 points.
Yeah,
first
are we
of all-
making a plan for the 92nd to be a school, and just because citizens of today in Franklin say that
Yeah.
they don't want to split a high school, isn't
That's
that a
what I wanna
reality?
address.
Yeah,
So right now, our high school's at 80% capacity. So our high school has room to still add students. Now, we still run tons of classes and we have space, but we're running at about 80% capacity. But that's like filling every space inside of the school. We certainly do not have enough PE space, and our tech ed space is antiquated at best and unsafe. So with that stated, that's where we are today. Our survey, which was MD Roffers did it, who worked with the city on all the developments that are happening for future developments, looking at the 50-year plan, shows us growing very slightly by the year 2041 in terms of our high school students. So even with all of that growth, we're not projecting to add a ton of students to the high school. In fact, our elementaries are about even during that entire time too, so for the next 60 years. It shifts where they go, like Countrydale becomes massively inflated. So boundaries probably have to change because Countrydale can't hold 800 students.
right, and I'm in the
But-
Countrydale area,
Right,
and
but
that's where the
elementaries,
92nd
we're
and
not
Ryan
overrun with elementaries.
land is, so that would be where a school would go.
Correct, but we're not overrun with elementaries.
Hmm.
We would just have them in, we just have to
I'd like to make a
district to get
motion.
people to go different, because we have the right number of classrooms, even for the projected for the next 16 years. And again, not doing the simple math, MD Roffers works with the city, they look at development, they're calculating home turnover rates, and not just our, like, in the whole city, they're looking at some pockets of the city where our home turnover rates in those particular areas. I think they divided it up into 57 areas or something like
Marion, has the city finished the plan then for the 20-year plan?
No, so we're currently under the 2025 comprehensive master plan and comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. I believe they did some work using the existing zoning plan to estimate population growth based on allowable densities. The new ordinance does allow for more density in general. And then the future development, comprehensive master plan, I mean, that's up for discussion. So there will be a discussion about how many acres of land can be used in what way. You have to build on the existing discussion, so I don't necessarily anticipate there being a huge amount of change, but there's ways that, probably shouldn't be for multifamily and others, etc. So there's probably going to be some change to our comp plan in the next 5 years. But overall, the new UDO allows for greater density.
And then your other question about the money. So for a referendum, when you hold a referendum, you are required to spend it on what you said you were going to spend it on. So we said we were going to spend it on this. That's what the referendum question outlines. So if we don't spend $1 today, it's more expensive tomorrow. If we don't spend it tomorrow, it becomes more expensive. So every day that we miss, and like we think in months and multiple months. So not necessarily today and tomorrow, but like every month we push this project back means every time we go out to bid, all those pieces might not work.
I'd like to make a
not that we're trying to rush it through because we are. I mean, we passed the referendum in November.
You did talk for a half hour and wasted.
You're right.
You had the floor for a half hour. Nobody else had the opportunity to talk, and now you want to hurry up and you're being rude to the representative.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. I didn't.
No, I'm just saying, like, we're not rushing this plan through. As you know, the referendum passed in November,
Right.
and we're now in June. And as Jesse said, we're still ironing out the finalities of the plan. So there are still just changing. So we've been very thoughtful. We've met with the city 5 times. We've met with both the fire and the police from just the municipality standpoint. I can't even tell you how many hours we've spent internally with our civil engineers, with architects, with construction companies to determine like what can we do, what are the issues for every little thing that we bring
We
up.
all have a vested
What are the
interest in
hiccups?
this too. I mean, do we have scientists that have looked at like what's grown, the trees we got, right? But what about the ecosystems within the wetlands, We'd be disturbing them, right? We can agree that we would disturb the wetland environment, right?
Yeah,
So
we've got a
that's what
wetland
we-
delineation that's been completed. They're still working on the final report.
Sure.
But we have had a wetland mitigation, a wetland delineation completed on site. There was a tree survey. So, yeah, I mean,
Waiting on the endangered species still.
yes, we do have
That's
an
not done yet either.
we have an update on that.
Mhm.
We did submit an endangered resources review. So that has been submitted. We did get it back from the DNR. They did note that there was one potential endangered species that could be located on site. So we will have to do a survey to meet the DNR's requirements for that specific plant. Blue stem goldenrod is the plant that could be located on site per the DNR. So we'll have to have a survey done for the DNR's perspective. So we are doing our due diligence on wetlands, woodlands, endangered resources, doing everything that needs to be done on that front. And I guess as far as like mitigation is concerned, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, the school district just wants to do whatever is required, what needs to be done in order to mitigate. They just want to follow the requirements at the end of the day. So it's like we're not trying to short staff anything. I guess there was some conversation about the new UDO versus the old UDO. I mean, even for me up front, like doing the engineering, as we were preparing for this meeting and for this process, it wasn't clear to us whether or not the new UDO or the old UDO would be in place at the time of our submittal and at the time of all of our meetings and how exactly that would play out. So that's kind of what led to that awkwardness of which standard do we follow. And we had that conversation with city staff, and ultimately where we came down on it was, well, let's look at the UDO that is going to be in place not at the time of application, but once we submit, that's going to be the new standard. So, we've been kind of working on that ourselves, and it is very confusing for this group, and then also for us too as designers. So we've been working, under those assumptions and just trying to get to where we need to be in order to, do our due diligence and make sure that everything's being done in accordance. So that's where we came from.
Do you have a final mitigation plan for the blue areas?
So the mitigation plan that we have prepared for today, the blue areas, those are what we're that's what we're proposing.
Okay.
I'm not saying like it's final,
Sure.
because we're still.
I mean, like, I think the best way to explain it is my question, I guess, is removing a boatload of trees that, this blue triangle in the corner floods when it rains. It doesn't take a scientist to know trees ain't gonna grow there.
Well, there are trees growing there though.
6.
In
Sure,
the
yeah, but
in the waterway is those
Yeah,
there are
but-
trees. It is wooded.
And it's buckthorn.
There is a lot of buckthorn. I will give you that.
Like I don't want to get argumentative, but I mean, Amy, you agree with me? This happens every time.
I mean, that's kind of my frustration. I don't want to just take it out on school board.
Yeah.
Which is why I think that I'd like to, make a motion to table this special exception and ask it to go back to the city staffers to define what UDO we're going to be following, because that does jump around, and to review some of these other discrepancies in not just the special exception request, but in the natural resource question and answer form. Because I think they're not addressed. So I guess that's my motion, is to table the special exception until these corrections can be reviewed again, and then we can take it from there when we have some clarification on, at the very least, what UDO, and then what the mitigation will be based on the defined UDO that we're supposed to be mitigating.
And I apologize to the commission. My understanding is that we have to review things under the ordinance that was in place at the time of middle. That probably got lost in Nick, or I'm not sure what happened there. So I apologize to everyone. This is a really weird time. So just to clarify, what information is it I'm hearing? Which ordinance applies? The content of the Q&A. So what she's referring to, there's a question and answer sheet that was in your packet. That is, the questions are roughly aligned with the recommendation that this body would be making to the deciding bodies. And it has information about the reasonableness of the request, alternatives, etc. But then this commission also prepares its own recommendation. That's kind of what do we think of those answers? So putting together a more coherent draft of that, that would be constructive. So
Who's in charge of
who's in charge of what?
writing that recommendation?
The planner that's
Okay.
typically drafts the recommendation, but it is this commission's recommendation. So if you take issue with any particular item in it, it is, you can suggest revision.
I do have. Or is anyone second? Can I ask a question before we do any more motions? For the mitigation on Hilltop Lane, Area 3, I'm not good at math, but essentially you guys are planting, let's just approximately say 700 trees. And another 200, or another 100, 150, whatever the math is, on that site. that's set in stone. You're solid on that one, or that's what's existing. Are these numbers?
So like these
Yep.
numbers,
Yep.
or
Exactly.
yeah, those are the number of trees and shrubs that would be required to be planted
Okay.
in order to meet
The standard.
guidelines of
Okay.
mitigation standards.
Okay. I mean, at least I like the idea of let's let's plant trees somewhere else. That's great, especially if it's being used illegally.
I just drove by it. So
Can I repeat what you have as a motion, Amy? Motion to table this for the city planners to review the special exceptions and determine which UDO.
to re-review.
To
'cause they
re-review?
did review it, and they said they recommend we approve it.
Okay.
So I would say to re-review, yeah.
Re-review special exemptions in regards to which UDO.
The
right?
special exception that we were presented with, yeah.
And then what the mitigation will be.
So that we can understand, yes.
And then with the addition of putting together a coherent draft of the recommendations and the hilltop mitigation.
When is the next meeting you guys have?
July 14th.
Would it be beneficial for Amy and Jesse to meet with Nick?
I think it'd be beneficial if that were if Nick actually came to me.
Right,
It would have
absolutely.
saved us an hour. and a half
Absolutely.
spinning wheels. Nobody can make a decision. because We don't have the information. Nobody's the same.
I mean, and I would also say, Mary, just so we don't keep spinning these wheels, these answers in blue are not, the fact that the planner would have accepted these, it's not okay with me. Like, we have to be more educated, or have somebody more educated reviewing these answers then.
Who
Habitat in wetland
Who
is
answers
not comparable
these? Just
to a
out of
wetland
curiosity.
detention pond.
like the
That questionnaire is filled out by the applicant.
okay,
Yeah.
It's part of the application.
sure.
It is a required form to be filled out by the applicant. And the problem is when the applicant fills this out, if their background is not in woodlands or habitat, which I assume the school board, whoever filled this out, is not, you can say this isn't applicable, or you can say, what's the negative effects of, the wetland, and you can say there are aquatic organisms, and the answer is we're constructing a wet detention pond to replace the organisms in the wetland. But that's not
How it works.
that's not how it works, and that's not scientifically factual in any way, shape, or form. So it's just, what's the point of this? If it's going to be meaningless answers from a novice, then why are we even requiring it? And I think we got to push back on that and say you need to hire someone who understands how to correctly answer these, not just the school, but anyone doing a special exception would need to hire someone who's qualified to answer these questions based on the special exception request, or not even provide this as a requirement because it's useless.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I don't feel I can vote.
Abstain then?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We'll jump to letter H. Conservation easements, discussion of conservation area boundary markers.
So there's a couple of items on your agenda that are from the Environmental Commission's prior agendas as you consolidate your work. And so one of the things that is required under the new Unified Development Ordinance is that developments that include a conservation easement will have some kind of boundary marker. And so I can set along the language of the new ordinance, but in general, it's things like boulders, signage, fences, etc. Because that boundary is now a hard boundary, and there's no encroachment into the buffer setback or the easement area allowed under any circumstances. Previously, we had what was referred to as a setback, where you could kind of mow or do some things, but you couldn't plant or put structures, etc., especially with wetland boundaries. So I don't have any materials prepared for this for today, but it's from that prior discussion. And I'm happy to answer questions about the requirement, or take notes about what information you want to discuss.
Thank you. Just want to add that one down the road. Letter I, littering fines. Discussion of recommendation to common council to increase fines or enforcement of littering from commercial and waste removal.
This is Mr. Valdez's item. He had wanted to discuss this.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Essentially, where I'm coming from is Loomis gets pretty bad. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to know that one either. I think we, as a commission, have the power to be a little bit stricter. I know waste management and GFL invest a lot in North City. However, I think we need to be a little bit harder, maybe on them before fines, but essentially they need to do their part of setting more crews to pick out trash, other than Milwaukee County once every 3 months if we're lucky, because that's a majority of it is. It's not just GFL's truck, it's not just waste management trucks, it's everyone going to the landfills. So, I mean, if essentially from here to the dump is pretty bad. So I just, a little thing, a little bit of pressure ain't gonna hurt anything on that. So I think it would be wise to write a recommendation to see if we can do that to make our city look better, our water safer, etc.
So just in general, this is what you're talking about is probably municipal code under the nuisances section. It's not something that I'm like broadly familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Work under the UO, but
Yep.
I can a little time to pull down those ordinances and bring them to the next meeting if the commission wants to discuss it. Okay.
Because Loomis isn't your guys' jobs, right? It's
It
Milwaukee
is-
County, correct?
It is actually a state highway.
State highway, okay.
Okay. I did not know that. Okay, so I will bring littering.
And any information about organizations that adopt a highway in the city of Franklin?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like a Boy Scout troop.
I think it is.
There are.
Boy Scout
Aren't there
troop or
some
something.
areas in Franklin that are adopted, right? There's
Oh, I'm
signage
sure.
for
I think
that.
Yeah.
27th Street.
I think there is, though, just maybe some general knowledge about who is looking over the city.
Is there,
I don't know.
there might be.
I believe that there are some roads that are marked as belonging to adopt a highway program. But, I mean, it might not be the city, it might be county or state, right?
Yeah. I interestingly just noticed a sign in Waukesha that said this road is available for adoption, which but I agree with you, Jesse. It is very littered. Yeah.
We'll jump into the unfinished business. We've got about 20 minutes before.
Having it A?
We get there, yeah, if not.
Okay.
So with
It's a
the-
hard stop at 9, so.
Yeah, that you can table your agenda at 9 o'clock. regardless.
Hard stop.
You could table things if you wanted to, but it's up to you.
Well,
guys.
there's two things on here that I really want to get to.
Well, I would also ask that you do your, if you wanted to hold them until the next meeting, but you currently are gonna be the chair.
Sure.
So.
We'll get to that one. I guess out of the unfinished business, the important one would be letter F, the Victory Creek Trail Mowing, Natural Resources. Information on the prescribed control burn, the issues we had with the residents doing their own mowing. You know where we left off with that?
We met with the gentleman, myself and Marion, instructed him, like we had discussed earlier, to stay out.
Where is that?
Just so talking area.
Oh, Mike Fassbender. Right?
You know where Pleasant View
Yeah.
Elementary?
Yeah.
It's that.
So, because Mike was mowing the kind of the tracks, right?
Yeah.
That's ringing
It was
the
more
bell.
than just mowing because we had digging
Oh,
channels
okay.
to funnel water into areas. And
Oh.
they built some bridge structures.
Sure.
Somebody may or may not have had permission years ago to do mowing. Has been allowed to happen, but city document decide that it happened or didn't happen.
Sure. No, I know exactly what it is. It's the field behind, or to the left of Pleasant View.
South
Yeah.
of it.
Okay, thank you.
I can pull up a map, but apparently.
That's okay. I know where it is now.
So you guys met with.
So we met with them and along with the mayor, and it was to say we'll take over the maintenance of any trails that go through there. But we're just, because we just did the burn, so we're going to have the burn going on for the next 2-3 years. So we're going to work with them along with our crews and going to mow it the way they want it mowed for the burn.
Are they the removal of those couple little water? That
Did you get them all out? No.
Yeah.
In time. We got the drainage pipes out that they put in. We got the rock pass that they put in out. We're getting there. Some of the culverts we got out.
Sure. That was the one that I had. I guess while we got time before we leave, new business. I guess electing people since we're fine. I guess we start with the election of the chair. Oh,
I would like to talk about the Saputo.
sure. Okay.
That's okay. So the Saputo donation, Saputo Legacy Program had donated $50,000 to our new flooring as of last year. And it was within that application that they had required that we have a sign. We went ahead and had that sign. Unfortunately, we wanted that to be part of the parks tour, to have your input as to the location of the sign. But because of no meeting last month, Dale and I took it upon ourselves to go out on site and look at an area where we could install it. We're having a presentation or unveiling on June 18th, Wednesday, at 9:30 a.m. You are all invited to attend for that unveiling. Our park ambassadors will be there, the mayor will be there, and as well as the county council are all invited. As you can represent our community, and a huge big thanks to Saputo Legacy Program for their very generous donation. So if you look up on the board here, this is where Dale and I had determined that it would be best placed right on the entrance there for all to see as patrons come to Kayla's Playground. So as I said, I would have liked to have the input from the commission, but unfortunately it needs to be put in. So hopefully everyone is okay with this location, and Dale will have that up for our next one. So if you guys can attend at 9:30 a.m., June 18th. And then one other thing, Emily Phil, she was one of the original Girl Scouts who created the bottle cap art over at Kayla's Playground in 2021. Some of that artwork or bottle caps had fallen off. I spoke to her as part of a recruitment for ambassadors at the high school, I just mentioned it to her that it was in need of repair and she was out. So unfortunately, we didn't get those pictures on the docket because I was a little late getting those to Marianne, but hopefully next month I'd like to invite her and actually have the pictures for you. So, thank you. Oh, and the playground is closed today through Wednesday for maintenance. It's not being redone. It's just being maintained. It's part of the warranty maintenance through Blue House. Is that correct?
Routine maintenance.
Routine maintenance is not being redone. So, thank you.
I think we trust you.
I appreciate your trust. It's minor. It's some of the things that we've discussed tonight. So
Yeah.
no.
Can we get an invite sent out to everybody who on the commission for the
Unveiling. Julie, would
June
you mind?
18th at 9:30?
Did you already email me about it?
Well, I asked the mayor to contact the common council. I don't know if he included. Did you get that email?
That's a great.
Alderman Craig should have received that email from the mayor because I invited the common council, but I had informed him that I would invite this commission at this meeting this evening. But I can send you.
Yeah, if you send it to me, then I will send
You
it.
can outblast it, sure. If you could include the common council as well, double.
I have it in our notes, but it won't make it into the minutes, so best to get it sent out that way.
Excellent. Go to new business, election of chairperson. Are we interested? I'm not.
Do it again.
How many more people are on? Is it
Mary would say no to anything.
Mary, Susie, and that's it? This is it. Oh, I thought it was bigger.
You guys are struggling like
Because
us.
Leah and
Oh.
Shelley
We are
have
not voting.
not voted.
No, we weren't. We haven't been.
Oh,
We
no.
lost two, I
We
would
lost
say.
two when so
Well, one of them moved.
yes. Other one,
Was like too much.
much.
And not enough movement
Correct.
on her initiatives. And she did a lot for
Sure.
our group.
There was a lot of frustration. Tried to call 95% of shit that and good, bad, and different. And came up with what we thought was a suggestion that was kicked on the council, shot down. Basically, a lot of stuff. Reservations. That's not our. And just the constant spin is what frustrates. This was forced upon us. I think it's kind of was the chair.
Jesse,
That's fine by me.
I make a motion, we elect Jesse Valdez as the new chairperson.
Awesome. Wait,
Everybody,
what number is
A.
5A.
5A? It's all over the place here. Okay. Sorry.
Or VA.
And there's election of a vice chair. Anybody interested?
So, hold on. Let's just get the motion was made by who for the chair?
Amy.
Yes.
Amy. Chair. Okay. And who seconded?
I did.
And everyone present said aye?
Yes.
Okay.
Michael, you're not in.
Deciding if I still want.
Yeah. I were, Kristen, you're not interested? Or?
I am not interested. No,
Jason
my
said he
term will
would
be
be
up in
willing.
April.
I'd be willing
and then
to.
Wilmington, but no. Yes? Are you interested?
I would be willing to take the role as the vice chair for the committee.
Fantastic. I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. So, anybody else? Ayes?
Everybody says yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Running unopposed.
Yes. Yes. So, Jason Page is vice chair. Will it be next meeting that he would do the secretary then?
Yeah, that would
Yeah,
be.
probably.
Okay.
Mary will refuse.
Mary won't do anything. So,
She was secretary for a long time.
she was.
So I'll put next meeting then.
Yeah.
The chair appoints a secretary.
Fantastic. With that being said, we'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic. We'll see you guys in a month.
8:48. What is the date?